sat Lishkat Gazit. Are you aware what Lishkat Gazit is? No. Lishkat Gazit is the area where the Sanhedrin sit on the Temple Mount. Lishkat HaGazit. The stone that the Beit HaMikdash is made out of is called Avnei Gazit. It's hewn out of the ground. That's one opinion about the greatness of Yitro and the merit of that he fed Moshe Rabbeinu. His lineage got to be sitting in the Lishkat HaGazit. Rabbi Simon in the Midrash says even more. Do you know when a God is going to pay back Yitro? Right now. Yitro is going to be paid back right now by Shaul. What does Shaul do? He warns what? The Kinim, you can't hang out here in this area. Okay? Well, what do we learn from the point here? Chazal explained to us that anyone that does chesed with Gedolei Yisrael, then you know what? It's as if you're doing chesed with all of Am Yisrael. And it's a very important point over here. I learned from Rav Bachrach, one of the great Tanakh teachers in righteous blessed memory of this past generation. Rav Bachrach asked the following question. Do you remember what was the relationship of the nations of the world to Israel when we came out of Mitzrayim? Do you remember in the Song of the Sea what people think about Am Yisrael? What do they think? In the Song of the Sea, what do you hear? The generals of Edom, they're full of what? Fear. The gods of Moab, they're trembling. You say it every day, don't you? Okay? Nivhalu alafei Edom, elei Moab yochazei morad. In other words, at the level that we're on top, we're coming out of Mitzrayim, the sea was split. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved the Jewish people. At that moment, when the nations are fearing us, who doesn't fear us? Amalek, exactly. Amalek is likened to, the famous Midrash says, that Am Yisrael is like a burning or boiling bathtub. Ambatya rotachat. You heard of this Midrash? Yes? And what are they doing? They're attacking us when others are in fear of us. What are they doing to the boiling bathtub?
Jumping in.
No, what are they doing to this boiling bathtub? They're cooling us off. No one wanted to touch us. No one would dare touch us. Everyone's trembling. God took us out of Mitzrayim. He split the sea. And now, so in the eyes of the nations of the world, the nations are in fear of the Jewish people. Okay? They're in fear of us. And here comes Amalek, and he's showing the world that you know what you can do to the Jewish people? They can be attacked. You can go up against them. So what he did was, according to Chazal, is he cooled off this bathtub. He cooled it off. And what are we told about Amalek in the book of Dvarim? V'ata ayef v'yagea. V'ata ayef v'yagea. In other words, in spite of the fact that Amalek was weakened, we realize that these people don't have fear of God. When Yitro joins the Jewish people, the Talmud asks, it says, Vayishma Yitro. And Yitro heard. What did he hear, the Talmud asks? The Talmud says two things. He heard the splitting of the sea, and he heard the war against Amalek. Now, when you come up as Amalek and go up against the Jewish people, you start believing yourself. Amalek has the ability and the power to go up against us. Gentlemen, Amalek is not fearful of us. The Kinim did chesed with us. Yitro did chesed. And others converted. Okay? You now understand that the Kinim and Amalek are like one and an opposite. Okay? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows Yitro to see that you can destroy Amalek in this world and the next world, Yitro does tshuva. Many of them join the Jewish people. And the summary is the following. There are two nations in the world, Amalek and Kini, that they are very central in the world in their relationship to Am Yisrael. And they have different relationships. The Kinim, on the one hand, have a relationship of honor, love, affection, appreciation to the Jewish people. Amalek, though, represents that part of the world that is wicked. And they're teaching us to what extent can wickedness reach and arrive to. Now, if you notice in the Tanakh later on, descendants of Yitro, in the book of Menachem Bet, we learn at the time of Yehu, one of the kings of Israel, there was a Jew called Yonadav ben Rechav. He's loved, he's honored, and he's the seed of the Kinim of Yitro. In the book of Yirmiyahu, so too do we understand that Bnei Rechavim, they're Bnei Yitro, they were living life of modesty, they were living life of tradition. Now, let's raise the question. Of which people do you find neighbors of Amalek in the south? The descendants of Yitro. In other words, in spite of the fact that these guys of the Kinim are tzaddikim, gerei tzedek, they're very special, in spite of that fact, in spite of their cleaving on to God and the Torah, we see that Bnei Kini, where are they mixing up with? Who are they mingling with? Amalek. This is not the only time. Does anyone remember in the book of Shoftim where we meet up with descendants of Amalek? Do you remember the war of Sisera?
Yeah, we just read it.
Who was the war? You just learned it now?
Yeah, we just last week.
In the war of Sisera, and the king Yavin, the king of Canaan, he goes up in the war against Israel at the time of Dvorah Neviah, correct? Dvorah Neviah. When Sisera, on the which mountain? Tavor mountain, up in the north and lower Galilee. When he flees in the war, okay, he goes into the tent of who? Yael. Who is she? Eshet Chaver Hakini. She's the wife of one of the Keni men. Now, why, of all places, does the chief of staff of the army, Sisera, why does he go into her tent? Oh, he was confident that he can find, what is it called, political asylum. He can find political asylum inside the tent of Yael. The Tanakh says in chapter 4, verse 17, Ki shalom ben Yavin melech Hatzor ve'beit Chever HaKeni. Isn't this interesting? The Kenim have like a what? A treaty with the Canaanites, our enemies. What's going on? So even the question becomes even more difficult on these great gerei tzedek, on these wonderful converts of the Kenim. Why, if they've been implanted inside the Jewish people so much, why do we find them neighbors of the Canaanim and neighbors now of Amalek? Is that a question? He might even call it a gewaltige question. His Yiddish is so good, right? It's a great question. It's a very strong question, right? It's a very strong question. Could it be that the tum'ah, the impurity, the bad impurity that these gerei tzedek had from their original nations is still part of the impurity, is still implanted in them? Could it be? Not by mere incidents is the Keni living amongst Amalek. Okay, Shaul sees this. What does he not say? You deserve to be attacked. You deserve. He doesn't say that. He calls out Shaul to the Keni that they should what? Arois vendu. Get out of here. They should get out of here, out of Amalek. Amalek has no correction. Amalek has no fixing whatsoever. What does it say in the words of Bilam? V'charito adei oved. In the end of days, Amalek will be destroyed. And now, Shaul believes that the Kinim, even though they're neighbors with Amalek, he believes that they can make a takana. He believes they can correct themselves. Okay. Then, after they leave, we see that Shaul in Pasuk Tet has chemla. He has chemla. Number one, he has chemla on the king. Okay? And on what animals does he have chemla?
Good ones, like the fat ones.
As far as the ill, the sick animals, the ones that have broken parts in their body, he killed, and he did not have chemla. But the fat ones, the healthy animals, he didn't kill, and he had chemla. In other words, he took the best, let's say the medium grain and the best animals, he took for himself, and he killed the worst ones. That's as far as chemla on the animals. And as far as human beings concerned, it seems in Pasuk Chet that all the soldiers of Amalek he killed. Me'ish v'adisha. It could even include the young ones, the sucklings, and the babies. But who did he have chemla on? Who did he take prisoner?
The king.
The king.
Okay.
The king he takes. Now, this is not just a weakness of a moment. You know, all of a sudden, his skin turned and he had chemla, mercy. Okay? And it's not because, Agag was wearing a lovely bow tie. That's, oh wow, I wish I could have a bow tie like him. I love people with bow ties. It's not because that Agag found favor in the eyes of Shaul, that Shaul left him alive. Okay? And it's not because the sheep or the cattle, the fat cattle, interested his soldiers of Shaul. Because you know what? Is Shaul missing any animals? What does he have in his farm? Hundreds of thousands of livestock. Remember, how was the army of Israel counted? Everyone came to Shaul's farm and can have an animal, and he counted that animal. Shaul supplied everything. He supplied everything. Rather, as we're repeating and understanding the war against Amalek, we enjoy using the Malbim's explanation. The Malbim says the chemla here is not an emotional thing. The chemla here is actually a thought, an idea, an intellectual thought and idea. That you don't go ahead and destroy something that has no benefit. Rather, save it. Allow it to exist. In other words, it's being clarified to us right now that the shortcoming of Shaul HaMelech is that his grasp going to war against Amalek is not a divine understanding. Rather, it's more a human, rationale, ethical matters that based upon human logic. Okay? He doesn't see any weakness in taking Agag and putting into captivity whatsoever. Okay? On the contrary, maybe the fact that he captured, the Malbim says, the fact that he captured in the war, maybe that's a sign of a general victory. I don't have to do any more. But when he's told he didn't do the right thing, let's read the words of Shmuel, Pasuk Yud and Yud Aleph. Vayidvar Adonai el Shmuel Lemor. God now prophesies Shmuel. Nichamti. Ki imlachti et Shaul. I'm sorry. I regret that I reigned Shaul HaMelech ki shav me'acharai v'dvarai lo hikim vayichar l'shmo vayizak el Adonai kol halayla. Okay, here it is. There's a gzar din. There's a decree here. As if, you know what? It's not even dependent upon tshuva. Such an offense that he did is not dependent on tshuva, even though Shmuel tries to cry out all night to him. And in Pasuk Yud Bet, when Shmuel, what does he do? Like all Gedolei Yisrael, he gets up early in the morning. And he's very zariz, very full of alertness, quickness. And he goes to do his performance, and he arrives to Shaul in the morning. I did see some commentators say that he is building a statue in the Carmel, in the Judean area, not the Carmel Mountains, which some others suggested. And what is the building of a Yad Chazakah there? What is it representing, gentlemen? What he builds here is a Yad. It's what it's doing is it's representing like the strong hand of the army of Shaul, that this was a success. But what does Shaul do right after he builds his statue? Vayered Gilgal. We didn't get to this. Why does he go down to the area Gilgal? What does Gilgal represent for Shaul? Okay, what does he do? What does he have there? So the Radak says there was like a similar Oel Moed there, like a tent of meeting. That was the beginning of the settlement of the Jewish people during Yeshua's time. There's a Mizbeach there, and people would go there to give thanks to Hashem. That's what he wants to do. In other words, in Shaul's mind, it's total victory. There's not even a notion in his mind that he didn't become a victory. So we see here that he's going to the same place. Do you remember what mess up he did there? What mess up did Shaul do there? He didn't wait for the prophet to arrive. So he's going back to the same place where he messed up, where he sinned, where he didn't wait for Shmuel. And now he's going there to give thanks to God and maybe bring korbanot, to give thanks to God after the war of Amalek that he sinned in it. Wow. It seems like the worst things are happening here. Who arrives there as well? In Pasuk Yud Gimel. Okay? Who arrives there? Down in Gilgal? Shmuel. But who greets who? Who goes out of his way to greet who? Shaul. Isn't that interesting? The king, who deserves all the honors you would think. He's now submitting himself, belowing himself in order to greet the prophet and say to him, Baruch Atah Hashem, Hakimoti. You know what? I fulfilled God's words. I did everything right. Wow. Does he have a big surprise waiting for him? He thinks he did everything is fine. Shmuel, of course, asks him, Shmuel has good hearing. He passed the hearing test. What is this? What is the what? What is he asking? What is the kol hatzon? What is the kol habakar? Okay? It's clear. From who could it be that he's listening? And Shaul, of course, answers him in Pasuk Tedvav. Notice what he says. Vayomer Shaul me'amaleki hevium. Does he say ani heveti?
No.
Rather hevium. In other words, he's taking himself, the Malbim says, out of the klal. The klal that did this, that took these animals to bring them for future korbanot, we'll see in a moment. Okay, they did it for a supreme purpose, to bring what? Leman zivoach l'Hashem Elokecha v'tayoter echramnu. They wanted to bring korbanot, and the rest we destroyed. The rest meaning those that are not fat, those that are not strong, those that are sick, and so on and so forth. And here, he's basically saying, it's the people that did it, the soldiers that did it. He doesn't consider himself, Shaul, as part of the nation that what? Violated the law here. And therefore, I didn't do an Aveirah. So certainly, you can't mean me. Oh, what does Shmuel do when he hears this reference? Okay? By the way, he's saying, the people are so religious in the nation. They want to do korbanot. What? So religious people, they want to do korbanot? He's going to say, Vayomer Shmuel al Shaul in Pasuk Tet Zayin, Heref. Heref, time out. Relax. Don't talk. I want to explain to you everything. Okay? Hamtein. Rashi says, in the name of the Targum, wait. I want to tell you everything. Vagidalecha. I'm going to tell you everything. Don't interrupt me. Sometimes you know how reporters come, and whatever answers you give them, they're not happy. They interrupt you, especially in the state radio. Okay? Here, maybe Shmuel is afraid that Shaul might interrupt it. Let me talk from the beginning, and then I'll let you talk. But right now, Heref, Tamtin, wait, and I want to tell you what I want to say. I want to tell you very hard words. Heref vagidalecha. Et asher diber Hashem elai elai. I want to tell you what God told me this night. Vayomer lo, daber, speak. Pasuk Yud Zayin, verse 17. Vayomer Shmuel, hello. Surely, im katon ata be'einacha. I'm stopping there. Why does Shmuel relate to Shaul and remember or remind that Shaul is what? Katon be'einecha. If you are small in your eyes, what is it referring to, my friends? His humbleness, his modesty, that show that he's delivered until now. To remember before he was anointed, when he was chosen at the place of the offerings, what did he say about himself? I'm from one of the smallest tribes. Ani mikatnei shiftei Yisrael. And then when he was chosen, the Urim v'Tumim were there. Where was he? Hiding. Nechba lakelim. Do you remember a third matter? That when he was initiated to be king, and there were those without the yoke of heaven, Bnei Bilial, and they were putting him down. What was the reaction of Shaul then in that third matter? Vayihi kimachrish. What's kimachrish? Cheresh. What is a cheresh? A deaf person. Cheresh shotev katan. He was a cheresh. So it's not, even if you consider yourself katonata beinecha, the truth is what? Rosh shiftei Yisrael ata. But you are what? You're the heads of all the tribes of Israel. You can't say that it's the problem of the people that took the animals. Because you're what? The head. Who's responsible for what they're doing? Exactly. He can't say it's not my business. It's his business. Okay? What? Vayimshacha Hashem lemelech al Yisrael. Not only the heads of all the tribes, but you were anointed by God to be the king over Israel. You certainly have the responsibility. Yudchet. Vayishlachacha Hashem bedarech. What did God do? God sent you bederech. Bederech mere meaning in the way of nivuah, in the way of yosher, honesty, in the way of emet. And what did God tell you? Vayomer lech, in the imperative. Vacharamta et hachata'im et Amalek. God told you to do away with the sinners with Amalek. Meaning, you should know, why is Amalek nicknamed the sinners? They have a PhD. They're very professional in sinning. They can sin and they can cause others to sin. Therefore, they're nicknamed hachata'im, those that are sinners. Okay? But you were told to do away with them. V'nilchamta bo, to fight with them ad kalot hamotam, until you do away with them totally. Pasuk Yitet, v'lama lo shamata b'kol Hashem. Why didn't you listen to the voice of God? In other words, this sin is on your neck. Okay? This sin is on your neck, that you did not wipe them out totally. Okay? Vata'at el shalal, you swayed yourself to go to the booty. Vatas hara b'nei Hashem, capital Hey, hara, you did the worst evil in the eyes of God. And now Shaul doesn't understand. What evil did he do? Pasukah, verse 20, the response of Shaul, Vayomer Shaul al Shmuel, Asher shamati b'kol Hashem. What's going on? I listened to the voice of God. Vaylech baderech asher shlachani Hashem. Went on the route. I went to the war that God sent me out. And what did I do? Ve'avi et Agag melech Amalek ve'et Amalek echaramti. Okay? Other than, I brought Agag as a prisoner. Okay? And the rest of Amalek I destroyed. In other words, I went up north. I went down south like he said before. So the reply of Shaul is with security, with confidence, against the claims of Shmuel. Okay? I did the main part of the mitzvah. I brought the victory to the Jewish people. Okay? I brought Agag Melech Amalek here. Did he do it for the sake of heaven? Of course. What does he say in verse 21? Vaikacha mi'ashalal, he tells, but the nation is the one that took from the booty. Tzon, Uvakar, Reshit Acherem. In other words, Shaul is answering here that everything was done for the sake of heaven. Lizboach Lashem Elokecha Bagilgal. Everything was done for the sake of heaven. The animals were taken not for pride, not for financial gain, but everything was taken l'shem shamayim. Okay? There's nothing better than doing it for the sake of heaven. In other words, with these animals, the people, the soldiers wanted to do a mitzvah. They wanted to do a mitzvah. What does Shmuel say to this? Pasuk Kav Bet. Vayomer Shmuel. Hey, the letter Hey is the question Hey. Hachefetz Lashem be'olot uzvachim kishmoa bekol Hashem. Hine shemoa mizevach tov lakshiv mechel evilim. Do you think the words, by the way, hachefetz laHashem, refers to the entire pasuk? Some of the Rishonim say. Do you think God wants what? Olot uzvachim? Or do you think He wants zevach tov, a good sacrifice, or chelev elim, the fat of the rams? Do you think He's interested in those things? No, it's not automatic. No. What does God want? He wants you to listen to what? To His voice, to His command. Okay? In other words, the fact that you want to bring sacrifices, olot, and chataim, that's not as good as listening to God, what God says. If you listen to what God says, you know what? What will you be released of?
We're supposed to kill all the animals.
If you're going to be listening to God, you don't have to bring korbanot, bidiyuk. That's what the Rabbi explains. Okay? The word chayfetz that the prophet uses is a character trait in the nefesh of the person. You so much wanted to bring what sacrifices to serve God, you're forgetting what's the objective of the sacrifice. What is the objective of the sacrifice? To serve, get closer to God. But you have to listen to what God is saying. Okay? What you're expressing right now is sin. Pasuk of Gimel 23. Ki chatat kesem meri. Okay? This witchcraft. It's witchcraft of rebellion. Okay? What he's saying here. Ki chatat kesem meri. The sin that what you're doing is like the sin of, rebelling, doing bad things of idolatry. What you're doing is like the action of rebellion. Okay? When you don't listen to what Hashem is saying, you're doing an act of rebellion. Okay? I wanted to even share with you what the Radak says here on this very powerful pasuk. Let me see if I find it. Okay, listen to this. Klomar, kemoshe chet kesem uchata gdola. Just like witchcraft, the Radak says, is a great sin. Why? Why is witchcraft, which we're obligated not to believe in and use, why is it such a big sin? Because you're taking away your trust in who? Beautiful. Ki umeisir bitchano me'akadosh baruch hu, v'noten bitchano b'kesem. Instead of giving your trust in God, you're giving your trust in this witchcraft. Keinu chatat gedola chatat meri. This is the sin of rebellion. Vihu, what is it? I'm reading the Radak, not the pasuk here. Misha moreh. Okay, someone that's instructing Pi Ha'el, the mouth of God. Ve'eino oseh ma shetzivan. You don't do what God is instructing. Ki achar shavar al mitzvot, after you violate God's commandment, hareu kaferbo. You're denying God. Umeisir bitchano mimenu, and you're removing your trust in God. That's why it's like witchcraft. It's like a rebellion that's against God. Further, let's go back to the pasuk. V'aven utrafim haftzar. Did we see trafim not long ago? Trafim. Who stole the trafim? Rachel stole whatever vessel this is. Some say it's in order to tell the future. But what you're doing, Aven and Trafim Haftzar, what you're doing is you're dealing with lies. You're dealing with not the reality of God. You're dealing with such different types of witchcraft and the wrong things that you're doing here. Until now, Shaul has yet to admit to his guilt. He has yet to admit his guilt. The last words now of Shmuel giving it to Shaul, the end of 23, Ya'an, since ma'asta et dvar Hashem. Instead of you having cheshek, desire to do God's will, you loathed God's words. Vayimascha melech, and he loathed you from being king. In other words, you're adding on to your list of sins by really rebelling here. Okay? And in a very clear-cut way, Shaul is now understanding that his humility is the wrong thing whatsoever. His humility is the wrong thing. Here, Shmuel is revealing to Shaul in a very clear-cut way that his mistake, his humility, not realizing his greatness in his matters here. Okay? At the middle of Kav Dalet of 24, Vayomer Shmuel Chatati, Ki avarti et pi Hashem et dvarecha. Now he realizes he's done terrible things. Ki areiti et ha'am, I had fear of the nation, veshma b'kolam.
Was he talking about Amalek as a nation or as
No,
people?
very good. Here, the king is saying, I was afraid of my people, the people that were demanding to take the animals, to take him captivity. Okay? So now, what do we have? On the one hand, he says chatati, which is what?
I said.
Vidoy. It's confession. But on the other hand, what is he saying? I have an excuse. What's his excuse? The people demanded. In other words, the reason for my sin is my fear to go up against the will of my soldiers. Now,
it's relating to when he was making the vow that anybody who eats after the defeat of the Philistines, and then he made the vow, okay, anybody who eats on that day, and then he finds out that Jonathan, his son, ate on that day, and then he couldn't kill him because all the people said no, he's the hero of the war. So he's like in conflict with the
very good.
ministers. Like.
This is going to be the first point we're going to mention tomorrow. We're going to notice the term ha'am here. This conglomeration, this multitude, this company. We're going to ask ourselves, it says chamal ha'am, or the am took of the booty, or right here it says I was afraid of the am. We're going to ask ourselves, who is the am? I want you to prepare Rashi. Okay? Who is the am that he's afraid of? And we'll continue with this point tomorrow. Okay? B'ezrat Hashem.